It's time. Start again. All right. Should we play the music again?
No.
It's time to find out the right or wrong exposure in this week's episode of Photography Out Loud. My name is Paul Davis, and as always, I'm joined with Joel Longbone. How are you doing? You all right?
You?
Well, apart from that horrible beginning, I didn't know where I was looking at, and I was just like, do I need to check down here to see that we're live, or?
You know when you're like, I don't know, caught doing something you're not supposed to, like picking your nose or something.
Close the lid.
Not what I meant. But there we go. What's wrong with you?
Anyway.
What's this about?
It's a camera.
It's very white, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, that's very nice.
Yeah.
Yes. Today's episode, we're going to be looking into what is the right, wrong exposure. Going to be looking into a little bit about exposure, basically. So
based on photography.
Based on photography. Yeah. So how a picture sort of looks in your camera, and I'm sure numerous things are going to come up as we talk about this thing. And please feel free at any point as well. You can always join in. So we'd love to hear how you like to expose your camera.
Expose your camera?
Yeah. Is that not how you expose the light within your camera?
Might need to put sunblock in. You leave it out.
I'm having a really good start today. Really good start.
Images, getting the correct exposure.
Yeah, getting the correct exposure. How you prefer? Do you like getting it right in the camera, or do you like messing about in the computer? So let us know in the comments. We always love to hear.
The two aren't exclusive, though.
No, they're definitely not.
Because sometimes you do have to get it wrong in camera because you can't get it right in camera.
Yeah, well, hopefully we'll be looking. I say hopefully. This is us, so we will see how far we get along down this train. Yeah, and we'll probably present something, and it'll be completely meaningless at the end of it as well. So
meaningless.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I don't know. Let's see how it goes. Anyway, Joel, slight news this week. Do we do slight news now?
Slight news as opposed to just news.
Yeah, slight news.
If there's only one thing, it's just slight news.
Yeah.
So just 2 items then.
Bit more news.
Okay. 3, it's just full on news.
Yeah, Panasonic have released a new lens. So back in a while ago, can't remember exactly, we saw a lovely lens from Panasonic come out, which was the 10 to 25 1.7 lens. So they've also released another lens.
So we should at this point probably mention that this is for their full frame range.
It is for their full frame range. Yeah, it's
yeah,
and it is the 25 to 50 1.7. So it is for the micro four thirds range. Sorry,
it is for the
yeah. So 25 to 50 1.7 through the range to complement the 10 to 25 that they've had in the past. So it's a big lens, but the other one was, in comparison to the system, I think if you're comparing it to what you get on full frame, you're not going to get a zoom that's going to do 1.7.
Yeah, well, and 10 mil.
And
14 mils pretty much.
Yeah, and
incredible distortion.
Yeah, and 10 mil. So it's nice to see that we've got a lens like that.
Hence why I was asking about the full frame micro four thirds.
Yeah, no, it's micro four thirds, and again, it's just giving you that. So 25 is 50, so it's a 50 to 100 full frame equivalent.
Yeah, because Sigma have one of those, don't they?
They do indeed. Yeah.
I've not played with that yet.
So 1.7, and it's still smaller than this.
Yeah.
And nearly getting to the point of doing the same job, but at 1.7.
And it's nice to see that both Panasonic and Olympus are still keeping on with their research and development.
Yeah.
Given that, Panasonic brought out the S range.
Yes.
Which is full frame L mount, which is fantastic. And then Olympus, obviously, people were worried that they weren't going to carry on, and yet they're doing really well.
Yeah.
So, and then the 100, 400 and the 150, 400 has been received very well as well.
Definitely.
So well, we can't keep enough of them in stock. I don't think we've even had free stock of the 100, 400 yet. And we're definitely not having free stock at all. 54.
Yeah, no, it is incredible. Like it's down to that demand again that we're seeing across the whole range, really, isn't it? More than anything.
Because Micro Four Thirds is obviously a fantastic camera system, and people getting giddy about full frame and things like that. But I think Micro Four Thirds still has a massive place in them.
Yeah, and
the possible choices of camera equipment.
Yeah, interestingly, I didn't ask how your week was, but we had a new / old rep in this week as well, wasn't it? So we had Aidan from Sigma come in, formerly from Olympus.
You like AKA
yeah
from Olympus.
But you know what I found that was really interesting? So we were having a conversation because he was talking about all the amazing new features that's on the FPL, 61 megapixel full frame, blah blah blah. Absolutely amazing camera. But again, so obviously he's come from using a Micro Four Thirds, gone up to full frame. And the differences of using those, and one thing that we were talking about is the minimum shutter speed that we were able to have. Like, you forget how Micro Four Thirds allows you to actually have such a slow shutter speed. A, because it's smaller and lighter, but also because of the insane amount of image stabilizer that you get into them.
Instantly, another point he made.
Yeah.
He's carrying all of his samples around going, yeah, I should have stuck with Micro Four Thirds.
Yeah.
This is like a bag full of full frame gear. And also, though, again, it shows how important Micro Four Thirds is. Sigma have done a great range of really compact prime lenses that are phenomenally sharp.
Yeah.
For the Micro Four Thirds system. So.
Which is the ICE, is that part of the ICE series?
Yeah. The 16, the 30, and the 56.
Yeah.
From memory.
So, it's, we're still, Micro Four Thirds is still a big thing.
Or not.
It's like, well done. Well done. It's like almost we're defending it, like it is going to go somewhere. It's definitely.
No, we want it to keep going.
Yeah. Because, it's
all these full frame haters, even though we both use full frame.
Yeah.
You do have a soft spot for Olympus.
I do.
I kind of do, but not as big as your soft spot.
Yeah, it's a wonderful system. It really is. So that was the news. Just that singular lens. So yeah, and I sort of asked you how your week's been in a roundabout way. It's been all right. So I've been in a field full of sheep today. So that was yep.
Your trainers or your boots and your trousers do suggest.
They're a bit.
I'm not saying anything about the smell.
Yeah, well,
I could have a shower next time. That'd be good.
I'll try. I will try.
Jet wash you.
Yeah, jet wash me before I come in through the door.
The cars. Just jet wash you afterwards.
Oh.
Just come into work in a wetsuit.
Yeah. So, but yeah, no, it's been an exciting week. Lots of photography again. So, and again, live streaming. Been doing a lot of live streaming for some of our clients as well. So that's been really, really good. So anyway, on to today's episode, where we're going to be talking a little bit about exposure. Apologies if any audio is being picked up from outside at the moment. So
should we
go to the comments before we jump into yeah.
Dib says, afternoon, gents. Afternoon, Dib.
Thanks for joining us.
Ian says, afternoon, chaps, and of course, Sarah. Good afternoon. Is it Tour de France or Tour de France still on? So I hope it's going well. Graham says, the innuendo is overwhelming. Whatever do you mean?
I don't know where it's coming from.
No idea. Right. David says, good afternoon. Can't stay, but greetings from Slovakia. Hello. I expect one of those postcards saying, I wish you were here.
Yeah. Hope everything's going well over there, by the way, as well. So.
And it says, I just want to be the furthest distance contributor at 1,030 miles. Do we have somebody from Australia?
I think we might have done. Yeah.
At least for this show, you get that award. Maybe we should have like achievement badges.
Yeah, and again, if you're outside of the UK, we always love to hear from you in the comments as well.
It's very hot here, about 34 degrees with thunderstorms forecast. Shame I'm working, not out taking photos.
Yeah, you'll get some time for some photographs, hopefully.
We expect to see greatness. Just on the storms, did you see the Neptune shot?
I didn't know.
It was on BBC News.
Okay.
Down south, and by down south I mean like Brighton area. There's a shot of the wave coming over the breakwater,
Oh, yeah.
and it looks like a face. It looks like the god of the sea. Or whatever.
Oh, nice.
And there's like a hand coming out of the sea, almost like.
Yeah.
It's very cool shot.
Interestingly, do you think so? That sort of falls into that sort of luck sort of thing, doesn't it? But again, that photographer might have been there sort of every sort of storm.
Well, he's the BBC photographer.
Right. Okay.
Area. But well, we could probably argue about luck in photography until the cows come home, whatever time that might be. But well, I think you make your own luck in photography a lot of times.
Yeah.
You've got to be there to get the chance. So, and yeah, I think things can come good, and obviously planning helps, but sometimes serendipity occurs and you get that shot, and you're the only one that got that shot, so you may as well make the most of it.
I think you definitely got to have that mix, haven't you? So that effort to go and do something, and then if you apply enough
shot sitting on the couch,
exactly, and if you apply enough effort, then you are going to get that sort of, it's defined as lucky shots. But
and also like experience helps, doesn't it? In the sense that if that moment did arise, if you know the settings,
what to do,
you know your gear. You mention it a lot with like wedding photography and event photography and commercial photography. Is like knowing your camera inside and out.
You've got to.
You're never thinking about it. You just do it, and I think that ups your chances of getting lucky, so to speak, in terms of getting a shot that you're after. So yeah, I think that's. Thoughts on it?
No, that's brilliant.
I don't know how we segue that way.
I don't know. Segue.
Oh, it's a storm, thunderstorm.
Thunderstorm. So
my uncle's into photography. And he mentioned it to me.
Rough segue back then.
To the right.
We'll segue this way, which is the right. Was it?
We're not talking politically. We're just talking about histograms.
Yeah. So when we're talking about moving left and right, we are definitely talking about histograms going forward. So. Yeah, Joel, I mean, first of all, do you have in your head what you see as, a correct or right exposure?
Yeah, I guess. It depends on the scene.
Yeah.
Because there's, well, I wouldn't say rarely, but there's quite often times when you don't get the perfect, so to speak, in your histogram.
Okay, that's interesting, though, because you are mentioning the histogram rather than the actual image. So, the way that you like to shoot is that you do like to bear in mind how much information that you're actually recording.
Yeah, because, well, with digital, especially, not that I've done a massive amount of film, but I know the screen lies a lot. Yeah. Like, it doesn't come out like that. And especially in sunny weather, especially if I'm like photographing the kids or whatever, like, I have it on sunny weather mode on the Sony. Like that's just like blown out.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's just bright. So, and obviously I pay attention to the little plus or minus dial sometimes.
Yeah.
And I like having zebras on.
Yeah.
Just because I do video stuff as well. But I think, I don't know, experience again, isn't it? Like you kind of look at it and go, yeah, that looks all right. Or I go, I'm going to have to under or overexpose because I know my camera can do it.
Yeah.
And I really want those clouds to be looking great afterwards. So
yeah, I think there's definitely the way that you shoot is definitely thinking about I could probably do this in the computer afterwards. There is obviously another way that people sort of look at how to expose a camera, which is essentially getting it sort of right in the camera. But again, that is how do we sort of perceive that? Is that looking great, or is that the most sort of information?
So you mean almost like a creative choice rather than a technical choice.
Exactly.
And also, incidentally, you say that, and I would agree because I kind of probably do think about my images technically from an exposure point of view, but also on my Fuji, my X100V, because I love the JPEGs out of that. I shoot differently on that because I know I want my JPEGs to not need to be touched. Like I shoot JPEG and RAW and then just delete the RAW.
But it's almost like a time factor, which I think definitely you've got to really depend on.
Makes me shoot in a different, or I choose to shoot in a different way because I'm using that camera, because it tends to be more for like time with my family. Or more of my, I don't like using that phrase, but like my snappy camera.
Okay.
It's not my proper camera, even though the images are proper.
Yeah,
like you
and
get great images.
They could contest pretty much anything out there.
Yeah. But I shoot differently with that compared to on a job with the Sonys.
Yeah,
because there's just a.
I mean, it is rather annoying when you come in with pictures from your X100V and just print them straight off, and they're absolutely amazing.
When I first got it, I went out for food and then
I was just like, what did you do? Yeah, what did you do to these? Absolutely nothing.
Absolutely nothing. And with the Sony, and this is probably true of Sony just in general, like there's more of a technical feel to them. Like I don't really shoot in JPEG on my Sony. Like I just know I'm going to have to edit them because the colors won't come out the way that I want them to.
Yeah.
So I definitely probably pay attention more to the technical side of shooting with my Sony versus the Fuji.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, I mean, if we're looking at this from a technical point of view, there is definitely a way of making the right exposure. And incidentally, just so happens to be on the right-hand side of the histogram as well. Your histogram being on the right-hand side of the histogram.
Okay.
So that is technically the best way of exposing it.
Do we need to caveat this conversation with the fact that some scenes will never, or will rarely move all the way to the right just because of what you're trying to achieve?
Potentially, I think.
Like we've got some customers who like the darker, moodier shots.
Yeah, but again, so that's the artistic sort of approach of things. You could get better image quality with moving to the right and darkening it on the computer. And it is a technique that has been around since digital started. I've been harboring on about it since I found it like 15 years ago, going, oh my God, this is amazing.
To the right.
Yeah, to the right. But it's sort of being lost a little bit now because the cameras are so good. So
what do you mean by the cameras being so good?
Well,
is it megapixels?
Yeah, one of the main reasons why we expose to the right and then make it darker on the computer if we want to is the main reason is to reduce noise. Okay, and if we go back sort of 10 years and look at sort of cameras from then there would still be noise at the base level ISO. So it'd be a case of we
live in a lucky time.
Yeah, no, we are very fortunate. And I mean, once again, if you're being sort of ultra critical of your images, now there's always some sort of noise sort of creeping into your image, even at your base ISOs, even if you shoot in full frame. There's still
quite the comment to make.
Yeah, no, it is, but there's still something there. There's still something there.
Going to, aren't you?
Yes.
At the end of the day, as romantic as we make photography, digital photography is just a load of ones and zeros.
It is.
And when we talk about noise, that comes from like sound.
Yes.
Where every sound system to some degree or another would have hiss or noise that was unwanted. And that was because, there's other things getting brought into the system. So when we talk about noise and ISO and exposing to the right, we're just talking about getting the best signal to noise ratio.
That's all it is, and it's a case
not romantic at all.
And if you're moving to the right hand side, for people that aren't familiar with histograms, you're actually making your picture brighter. Okay, so that's essentially what you're doing when you're looking at your histogram and you're moving your histogram. So the information to the right hand side, you're essentially increasing the amount of light that's coming into your camera, and generally the more light we have, the better the image is.
I was trying to think of analogies because we do love an analogy.
Well, you love your analogies, Joel.
I thought you loved my analogies.
I love listening to analogies. Yeah,
but that's I was speaking earlier. Live stream funeral about that because you want to be able to get the loudest, clearest sound.
Yes.
But without it clipping.
Yep.
Which we'll go into a little bit as to why you have to be a bit more careful as you go towards the right.
Yes.
But if you can keep it below clipping, then and your sound system is good from microphone to speaker or headphone, then that's the if you have to go like this, or you have to turn the volume up, or you're having to gain or amplify, which is
Yeah.
boosting from 100 to 3200 or 6400 or whatever it is. So if you kind of understand sound, that might help if you're into hi-fis and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I was thinking also, and this comes more into the clipping side of thing, but driving a car at
I knew the car was coming.
at really low revs.
Yes.
You're not. An engine has a rev range.
Yes.
0 to 6,000, 7,000, whatever it might be. Lower if it's diesel, blah blah blah. And if you took it to the rev limiter, that's where you're clipping, and you're no longer getting the advantage of taking it through. But if you want to go quickly and make the most,
you're keeping the revs high, aren't you?
But if you're kind of like, it doesn't really work because you only sit at low revs because you're boring and don't want to fuel. But it's that kind of mindset, isn't it? Where you understand that if you're going up the hill, you might have to drop down the gear. Take it along to the right more to get up the hill.
100%.
And when you're on a flat, you can come back a bit because you don't need on the throttle, because you don't need all of that power to maintain the same consistent speed. Yeah.
When we move to the right hand side of the histogram, so we are recording more information, and there are certain charts out there. I tried to remember all the numbers and it just wasn't going to work. But what you're doing as well is that when you move from something that's very, very dark to very, very light, you're increasing the amount of tonal range that you can have as well. But also the colors available within that range sort of double every time they sort of go up. You've got
more to differentiate.
Yeah, you've got infinitely more color the more you expose to the right hand side. And then if you want to bring it back down, then that color is still there, and then it renders sort of nicer. Exactly.
You were trying to make the software's job easier.
Yeah. And when you're in Lightroom, for example, and you move your exposure up by 1, okay, it's got to add color that isn't actually there. And it comes back to the point where I almost said that not a lot of people are doing this anymore, because things like Lightroom and Photoshop, they add color into your photographs so well to the point of where it kind of doesn't matter anymore. Yeah. So it's an argument whether you'd even want to do this.
Which comes back to that if you underexpose, and you were to do that +1, +2, +3 or whatever, and you get the horrible speckles of red and green and blue, which is your analogy going all the way, and actually it's just making it up at that point.
100%, yeah.
And you get horrible artifacts.
Yeah, especially when you've got shadows that are really close to that left-hand side, but you're wanting to make them into more like mid-tones. That's when you really start to see that, we call it noise, because again, that's what noise is. It's the computer adding information that isn't actually there. So it's adding that information, and obviously the less information that we have to start with, it doesn't do as well as it would if it had all the information. So we've got a camera set up here, and then we've also got a model where very patiently Henry has been just listening to us chat on. So we've got this camera set up on Henry. So we'll switch to Henry, and then we'll do a picture in picture so you can still see us as well once Joel figures out. Are we going down there?
I know.
We'll probably go up there. Yeah. So thanks for joining us, Henry. No memory cards, which is a fantastic start, isn't it? So I'm gonna have to go and get a memory card in a second. But I'm gonna have to go and do it.
Oh, it's nothing hard to do.
Here it is. It's fine. My computer's just saying I should have ejected that before taking it out.
Whoa.
And we're moving.
Come on, man. Sorry, Henry. Bear with us.
My apologies. There we go. So my camera at the moment is set to what the camera thinks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, program.
Yep. So it's aperture priority, shutter priority, and we can see the histogram down in the right hand side of the frame.
Laser pointer.
Yeah.
It's that black box with the
down there. Yeah. So that's a live histogram, but the camera again, it sort of always wants to head towards the middle. Okay, because it's trying to. Yeah. Yeah.
Just always wants to be in the middle.
Yeah, definitely.
Politically right or left, just.
Yeah, great analogy, Joel.
Just getting right down the
one of your best. That is. That's right up there. That is. So
somebody's going to come in with political science degree and say, "You're an
idiot." Yeah. You're totally wrong. What you're doing.
Apparently, that's a Milesa in Slovakian.
Oh, nice.
David Yeoman has put that in there, just ready for us. You are wrong in Slovakian, especially for Paul Joel. But I don't speak Slovakian, so I'm very, very sorry to any of our Slovakian speakers.
Yeah, if we got that wrong.
Slovakians that I have no idea.
So we could argue that we might want to make this picture moody. So I could darken this down, and potentially that's what I might want the picture to end up like.
No longer has eyes.
No, but I might be after the shadow on the side of the face. Really sort of low contrast sort of thing to do. So I might naturally do this in the computer, but all my information is at the other end. I've got very little information. Yeah, it's just chilling on the left-hand side, and I could basically double my image quality by exposing this a different way. So once again, I'm going to move this back to 0.
Which incidentally would produce an even nicer image and a better, darker and moody image.
Yeah,
get a really nice tonal.
You would, and this is where it sort of comes from. So, and I will need to sort of say something. For this to properly work, you do need to be on. It's no point unless you're on your base ISO. So we need to put this on 100, which is the base ISO, 100 on one of these, and one of these A7 III.
Got your steady shot.
I'm doing all types of wrong. So Henry is very, very good. He doesn't move. So we're not.
Although Johnny Moore says, afternoon, like you lads, little late joining, but live examples. Brilliant way to show what you're talking about. Sure, I saw Henry blink though.
Yeah. Oh, don't say that. I'll be straight off this live stream. So, for instance, this is back to 0, now. So technically, the correct way of, or the right way of exposing this would be to creep this up until I'm more to the right hand side. So again, the camera thinks that we should be on 0, 0, and it's doing a very good job of mixing out the darker background with the shadow on the side. So it is doing what it should do. But again, regardless of how I want the picture to look right now, because I would change this in the computer afterwards to get the most amount of detail out of my photo, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my and all I'm doing is I'm moving my exposure compensation. Okay, so
is the wheel with the numbers on.
Yeah.
Plus and minus.
Just doing that, and then what that's doing is that it's giving me more of that information sort of in there. I can take a shot and we'll have a look at this. And then something that you might want to do is just what I like to use is have a look at my blinkies. So if we go into playback, if I can remember how to use my camera. So we are potentially losing information on the side of the face. So the way that especially the blinkies work, or the highlight awareness, I think is the correct.
Warning.
Yeah. It's still using the JPEG preview. I'm going to talk a little bit about the JPEG preview in a minute. Okay. But you can have a look at that and you can see where you're actually losing it. And we can see that we're losing a little bit of information in that red area. So we'd probably go back and probably just knock this down ever so slightly.
It's not spiking, is it?
No, it's not. So, and then we would just bring this image back up on the back screen. Still a little bit, but we can see that the histogram's moved all the way back down. So we've managed to get a little bit more information with moving away from the.
But there's actually no black in that shot now, is there?
No, none whatsoever. So it does mean that if we wanted to make anything black, then that transition into black is going to be really, really smooth. Yeah. No, that's it. Because of the way that the histogram works, and especially the blinkies, as we saw, it uses the JPEG preview to see what's going on. So you do have to do some things for this to really make it work, and you start destroying your image more and more in camera, okay? Which, again, especially if you want to use things like your X100V,
this is not happening on my X100V.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not happening on the X100V. And it's something to bear in mind, because it really does spoil like maybe some of the enjoyment that you get out of the camera. So what I've had to do on this particular camera is that I've had to put this onto neutral, and then I've had to go in and then reduce the contrast down by +3 to -3, sorry, to get the camera away from using the JPEG preview as much as possible.
Trying to make it as flat as possible.
As flat as possible. And then I've also had to go into the menu system and hold on. And then I can't see.
It's a very attractive face there.
Thanks.
Set of binoculars.
Cheers, mate. So then I've had to turn sort of other processors off, like, and I should be on sRGB, not on sRGB, I should be on Adobe RGB if I'm doing this as well, because that is...
This is filling comments, really.
Yeah. Well, color space is only the space that you're working in. It's not the overall thing.
The forms thing.
Okay. So we'll keep that on there. But you might have little things like, I'm trying to find it. Where is it in this camera? Are we here yet? I can't see.
It's not AF.
No, that's in AF, isn't it? Right. So I need exposure. No, I've lost it. But you've got things like the you've got things like the dynamic range optimizer. Sorry that I couldn't find it in the in my camera there, but
you had turned it off then.
Yeah, it was off.
It was showing up in your menu there as well.
Yeah, so it is off in there. So you need to turn off all of these sort of processes that are trying to help. And what I can do to show is if we just once again use this picture here now. So if I put this on, for argument's sake, vivid, okay, which is the opposite of what I've got set on, and you can see that it's a real difference. But can you see how much the histogram has changed? Okay, and also
along to the left.
And also the other thing as well is that when we take a picture of this and we compare it, so if we bring it up on the screen and we've got blinkies on, you'll see that there's a lot more blinking going on within the vivid image than there is in the
clipping on the blacks.
Yeah. So again, but as we know, for anyone that shoots in RAW, this isn't the case. That information is still actually there. So if you do like sort of shooting in RAW, and you're all about sort of trying to retain that information, then you might want to bring these down so you can actually see what your RAW image is actually going to be. So
it's like looking at your RAW before you
exactly, yeah, especially if you like using histograms and stuff like that. So you don't need to go as far as this sort of ETTR, exposure to the right. I know, and we love in photography, we love putting things into letters, don't we? So there is oh God, I hate when this happens live. So you don't need to essentially do the whole ETTR thing. You can just use it for just seeing what your raw pictures are going to actually be like.
You say that, and I don't disagree, but I think it's a good habit to get into in terms of understanding where the light is and also giving your camera the best chance. Because equally, if you started to just exposing normally and you, for instance, I'm thinking like a landscape, particularly, or like a dark room where you're doing a wedding or an event photography. And there's like, like an old house, for instance, there's maybe like really nice like detail in the fireplace or something like that. And if you're exposing to the left, because the camera just says that's your exposure because the the skin looks nice on the person you take a picture of. You're potentially removing information out of the image that would add to the image, that would add to that kind of interest to the image, because a portrait is about the person, but equally the context with which you're shooting that person. And if it's a bride or a groom standing next to a fireplace, then you want to get to show how ornate the surroundings are around them, rather than just some like black mushy mess in the corner.
100%.
Trees are like a massive one for dynamic range, aren't they?
100%.
You have quite often the highlights of the sun coming through between the trees, or you've got a bit of sky perhaps. But if you lose the detail of that lovely texture in the bark because you've been lazy with your exposure, it doesn't matter how good your camera is. If it's not got the information because you've paid attention more to potentially the clouds, there might not even be clouds, so there might not be a risk of worrying anyway. But being able to draw that across to the right, like you're saying, like it makes that image go from good to wow. Like there's such a depth, and that's something that we've probably not been able to enjoy as much until more recent cameras, is the depth.
Because that dynamic range is massively increased.
And you can see it in phones, can't you?
100%.
But they're really trying to do what these can do with HDR, like the iPhone. Other phones exist, but it always wants to try and do it in HDR to kind of like show, look how good.
It comes up with that annoying second in the corner, doesn't it? Yeah, I'm exposing.
But the other thing is with the TVs now as well. Like and Apple brought out the Pro HDR screens. It shows how important dynamic range is. And you say ETTR isn't as important, but it is if you really want to be able to. It's almost like saying just shoot in 1080. When you've got 4K available, if you shoot a bit differently, you're going to be able to draw out all of that quality, which it's there. So why not make the most of it? And your camera, whilst it's pretty smart, you're the one making the decisions as a photographer. And I think if you can try and bring it over to the right as much as possible, and then have, like when you did it then, that hump moved like quite a significant bit, and you think, if you wanted to take that dark and moody, like the tonal range, and especially if you're going to print it, like to be able to get really like nice blacks, but bring all of that color or gamut in, essentially, like it's going to look really nice. And you on an A1 or even bigger shot, you go, ooh, those blacks just fading across. Whereas if you're not paying attention as much, you're like, what's a mushy bunch of black in that that darker side of that image. So I think
I think you've also got to bear in mind as well, like in this environment that we're in. So even we mock Henry, he's very good at standing still. But if it was what Johnny Moo was saying and he was blinking, then obviously the exposure that I was doing on here was a second. Okay, so if I put this back onto program, so my shutter speed is going to be at like 1/2/5. We're indoors at the moment. It's quite dark in here. The only way that my exposure is going to be increased is by my ISO. Okay, and this is really where the more modern dilemma sort of comes in, is because I'm going to be adding noise when I increase my ISO. But if I then shoot it darker, I'm going to be adding noise in the computer if I start sort of bringing it up. So it really, really works well when you're at your base ISO. It does a really, really good job. I still think it works better moving your ISO up slightly in camera and then tweaking a little bit more on the computer afterwards. At the lower ISOs, I think when you get super high into the high ISOs, it might actually be better just keeping your exposure normal and then bringing it up in the computer afterwards.
It comes down to, and this gets like even more technical, it depends whether you trust the software in your camera to do a better job of noise control, or Lightroom, Photoshop, Capture One, whatever. Because ultimately, at that point, it's just information, and the information will not change. It's only the interpretation that changes. So you kind of set your physical parameters with aperture. That is a physical property, and shutter speed, that is a physical property. ISO is not a physical property.
No.
Not like film. It's literally going the
It is-
volume on your hi-fi,
Well,
whether you want it loud or quiet.
It is like moving the exposure up in Photoshop.
Yeah.
You know, it's
and
the same thing.
Do you trust Photoshop more?
Yeah.
Now, the other side of it comes into practicality. So, do you leave it at ISO 100 and shoot anyway, and then just like, go
Rack
into
it up.
Photoshop?
Yeah.
Which you can argue is good or bad. But if you're going to shoot and you can't see, it makes more sense to put it up to 400 or 800 for, the small amount of noise difference, if there is any, between the camera doing it and the software. Now, there's probably way more intelligent people about this side of things, but your camera and the sensor have probably a better relationship in understanding which pixels are behaving the way that.
Yeah.
And there's algorithms in there that goes, oh, okay, that pixel.
Maybe that should move there, and
Whereas, Photoshop or Lightroom is designed for thousands of.
It's a lot more global, isn't it?
Which is why Capture One's very good, because it's very specific.
Yeah.
They've done a lot of research into every single camera and how it behaves.
And if you're fortunate enough to have a Canon camera, then you can use things like DPP, digital. I can't remember what it's called. DPP, the software that comes with completely free from the Canon website. And again, Canon have spent that time to
their camera the best.
Yeah, to put in those profiles.
They've worked out how to make the most out of it. And that's where you just have to kind of, figure out what you're willing to. Because ultimately, photography is always going to be balance and trying to, what's the word? Yeah, just balance between.
So you're thinking of the balance.
You're
thinking of the balance between the artistic approach and the technical side of things. Yeah, the
photography
compromise
is always a compromise.
Yeah,
because there'll never be enough light, and there'll never be enough lens, and there'll never enough megapixels.
Yeah,
never enough dynamic range. There'll always be something you want more of.
Yeah,
and you just have to make a decision for your image, be it creative, be it technical, whatever it is you're trying to achieve.
Yeah,
and just say, these are things. And the reason we've been talking about this is, for some people, they still don't necessarily understand the benefits of what the histogram means.
Yeah.
Because the histogram just looks like this funny mountain range that changes every time you take a picture.
Yeah.
It's like we were talking about it, weren't we, after live stream, was talking about the meters. Like, if you don't understand what those LEDs do, or those green, orange, and red things do, you could be like, oh, red's scary, so let's stay away.
Yeah.
And it is, but orange, you'd think, oh, that's a bit worrying. Whereas you want to live in the orange.
Yeah.
Because orange is where on most systems, you're getting to a point where you're getting close to zero, and getting close to zero without hitting zero is where you want to be, because you're not clipping.
Yeah. Joel's been doing a lot of audio recently, so
but he knows more about this than me, because he's like well into sound.
Yeah.
But understanding the balance of the distance of the microphone,
yes,
and then like what type of microphone you're using, all these different things, it's no different. And ultimately, it's just light coming in and a sensor going, oh, that's quite bright, or that's not bright, and then it says this is the color I think it is, and you just have to decide whether you're going to trust the camera or Photoshop.
Yeah, and I think ultimately that's it. And then again, finding that compromise. Just to wrap up before we go into the comments, because I can see some of them have come in. So there's some funny ones in there, I think, as well. So
also quickly,
yes,
isn't it interesting how photography has changed from film to digital, in the sense that you worry more about getting more light into the camera with film than you used to. But film was way more forgiving if you overexposed, whereas this digital is more forgiving.
Yeah,
underexposing.
It did that
because I remember watching a test on YouTube, and I think it was like 5 stops film would, allow you to overexpose by, but digital was like 1 stop maybe, but it would give you like 3 or 4 stops under because of the noise control and the ability for software to interpret. I find that quite interesting because I remember when I wanted to photograph my son just on film, so he had some film of him, and I got the images back. And I'm like, oh, it really like makes you remember how much light a film needs. Otherwise, you just get a grey, mushy, horrible, underexposed negative.
No, absolutely, and but yeah, there's lots of comparisons that you can sort of do on there with the film and digital as well. Pardon me. I think to wrap up, honestly, and I think really you've hit the nail on the head with looking at that comparison thing, because again, I've had to put a lot of settings in my camera, so turn all the features off. So the images that I'm looking at, even though that when I bring them into the computer and they're raw, obviously they're going to look different again now, but obviously there's a lot less enjoyment in looking at the images on the back screen because they're just completely flat and horrible and so on.
A picture of a rainbow.
Yeah, no, there's no color there whatsoever. But at the same time, so it's maybe finding that balance. If you want the absolute optimum sort of exposure out of your camera, exposing to the right is the way to go. But do a little bit of research into it, see whether it's worth doing, and then just have a play about with your camera. Maybe do some comparisons next time you're out. If you're going to a view that you've photographed several times, maybe try doing one sort of how you maybe darkly exposed, not a word, and then bringing it up in the computer, and then doing one the opposite way, so overexposing it and bringing it down, and just having a look at the detail. And then when you do things like that, they start to sort of kick in a little bit, don't they?
It's like you were saying, you learn your gear.
You learn your gear. And if you love shooting JPEGs, just crack on. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. But in that instance, you just want to get it looking right on your camera, because a JPEG is essentially almost that's it. So there's not a lot of detail there. So let's go into the comments and see what's going on.
Right, here we go. Mark says, greetings from Penryn side. The live studio looks fantastic. Very interesting discussion. Experience helps. Really sage advice, John.
Cheers. Thank you very much.
I've never heard that. Really sage advice, John, before. Any advice? Right. Capture. Mark says, capture speed is emotion. Screen lies. Ooh, blooming heck, that's deep.
Yeah. That's next week's episode.
Here we go. Jonathan, what are JPEGs?
Yeah, well done, Jonathan. Thanks for that. Do you actually want us to explain it, or?
Just Jonathan. We need to think of an astronomy question that's just like.
Do we though?
Yeah, could be.
Do we really want to go down that route with Jonathan? So no, thanks for tuning in, Jonathan. It's always lovely to see you, even though we can't see him.
Yeah. Mark says, Paul, this is excellent. This should be classified intel. Ramifications for video good too. It is true, because video you don't get as much lateral movement in terms of being able to. You can obviously shoot in RAW and shoot flat, but it's not nearly as easy. In
all honesty, I haven't done this research into what it relates into video, so
it's going to be fairly close. You tend to underexpose video a bit more.
Well, that's it. I think I've exposed the way that I would normally expose a camera, and I think I've struggled in editing.
That's why the zebras are so important on video. Is understanding what your camera.
So I don't think it flows across too much into the video side of things, but be interesting to look into though,
because like with live streaming where you're unlikely to get to edit it afterwards. Then you just want it to look good.
Yeah. Very true. Very true.
Whereas if you do want to edit it, again, it depends on what, because sometimes you do want to blow out the highlights on video, wouldn't you? Yeah,
to get that effect. Yeah.
And blowing out highlights.
It's not a bad thing.
No. You got to blow out the sun at some point.
Yeah. You're never going to expose for that.
So, and blowing out is more a print thing anyway. Yeah. We've not even spoken about why blowing out on clipping's bad, because
we're not.
It's only on printers.
We're not going down that route. That's another day. That is.
ETTR on 800 film speed too.
Well,
you can't see a histogram on film. But yeah,
Yeah.
well, there's more lateral movement on
Same principle. Yeah, it
the
is
more light the better.
Yeah, but obviously
You're not
you
gonna be
would.
able to bring it back in the same way.
Yeah, you'd need to know the dynamic range of that film, and then you'd need to know what your camera normally exposes at, and then see whether you're in that dynamic range to add more light into the picture. It's a lot more complicated on film, but technically is available on film as well. So
well, and the thing is with film, like we kind of briefly touched on earlier, was if there's no light hitting the film, there's nothing happening with the film. There's no chemical reaction occurring.
No chemical reaction.
You're kind of screwed if you don't put enough light on it. David Metcalf says, "Afternoon, gentlemen. Afternoon."
Thanks for joining.
Shot of a stag in the profile picture there. Johnny Mo says, "It used to be a really fine line in balancing the exposure to not lose the info either end. Dynamic range has really helped. ETTR too much could blow out the detail on people's skin in order to gain the dark details."
Yep.
So is there a position where it depends on the importance of the subject versus the context of the image? 100% yes.
Yeah.
And that we didn't touch on dynamic range really that much actually in terms of we mentioned HDR.
Yeah, it's about recording that data though to maybe do a dynamic range.
And people tends to be one shot. Whereas if it was architecture, you could take 3-10 shots to get your dynamic range like rush all the way through. But again, that's creative control because HDR, the first time people do HDR, it's just gross.
You get excited, don't you? I want all the information. I want the sun. I want the bit of cloud next to it.
It's like no contrast whatsoever.
Just all the detail.
But again, this goes down to the creative side. And I think creativity should win.
Yeah, 100%.
Unless it's a very technical image for whatever reason. But then you can produce quite often a better creative image, better understanding your tools.
Yeah.
And so if you understand what you want to achieve after the fact, knowing what your camera will achieve is the way to go.
Yeah.
So yes, dynamic range in cameras, sensor ability, processing power, all that good stuff has definitely helped and made life easier. But equally, it always depends. In my personal opinion, always depends on the creative.
Yeah,
that you're trying to achieve.
That creative side of things is got to be, really forefront of what you're going to do. Whether you're trying to achieve that creativity in the camera, or I think you need that vision to go, oh, I am shooting it this way because I'm going to go into the computer and then create it sort of this way. So
when you shoot your landscapes, you think about the edit.
Yeah, I see the edit.
You have the composition, don't you?
Yeah.
Which is probably the most important part.
I can look at the data because again, I like shooting technically.
The ones and zeros.
Yeah, well, in a way, I look at the histogram and go, and then I'm looking at sort of something that's very, very flat, very dark, and then it could look anyway on the computer. But what I do is I can see the information that I have and then know what I can do with it on the computer afterwards.
Pushing and pulling.
Yeah, exactly. So I've already started to make it an idea of what the picture looks like in my head. And then, when we bring that home and have a look, then hopefully we can develop from there. Ooh, another little sneaky word in there.
Martin says, "Hi guys, hope you're keeping well."
Thanks for joining.
Good to see you. And then Ian says, that mannequin thing comes alive when the shop closes. That's why the shop always ends up being a mess when we come back from being away.
Or why stock goes missing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the mice.
Yeah.
Johnny May says HDR on people is so horrible, makes them look 100 years old.
Yeah. There was a phase, wasn't there? Especially with the black and white. There was like HDR black and white. I think there was a phase, wasn't there, where people were finding sort of like really elderly gentlemen and then doing a HDR and then turning it black and white and then really pushing and pulling it.
Although I will caveat that by saying, if that's your creative design,
100%.
As long as I don't have to look at it.
But it's like, again, if you're into like music and sort of things, there's something that might come along that you think, oh, I like the sound of that, but then it's overdone so much, then you start to hate it. So I don't know, like Crazy Frog. Like, you know, I listened to that the first time and go, oh, that's fun. I might listen to that again. That's not bad.
Did you actually say that?
Yeah. Ding. You know, I got into it. It would come in, it would come on somewhere, and I'd be like, yeah, this is a bit of fun. But then obviously, like, everyone did it, and then it became really annoying. So, but yeah.
But also, people take things to the extreme, and a lot of people don't understand the nuance of colour and tone. And also, it tends to happen when people
Being quite snobbish now, aren't we?
No, it's just a creative thing, isn't it? And all of this is just opinion.
100%.
And
yeah,
it's all.
And if you have your opinion, yeah, just crack in there if you want to say something
come in
back.
Asking me to look at HDR shots.
Yeah, we're not gonna
politely decline.
Yeah. Well, we'll just tell you. It's just like, it's not my cup of tea.
Like, do you want some CC on this?
Right.
That'd be a no from me.
That's brilliant. I think that's all the comments.
Yeah.
And I think, well, that's another half an hour episode turned into an hour very quickly, didn't it?
So talking too much. Paul.
I'm sorry. I'm excited about ETTR. I always have been.
It's not your fault. I'm equal to blame when talking.
Yeah. Joel, any final thoughts before we break up for the weekend?
Just play around.
Play around.
Exposures to see what your computer. It's kind of tempted me to. I know I won't have time. But
well, I got tempted this because I looked into it again just to make sure that I was actually saying the right words or whatever. And yeah, I've been tweaking, and yeah, I've noticed, you know, pushing the ISO higher and the differences there. But just have a play, and I think that's just what you say, isn't it? Thanks for joining.
You got the video lined up for the outro.
Nope.
Don't do that. Pause the talk.
Yeah.
Well, what are you going to leave us with? Sage advice. What did Pavey say?
No, I will echo on what you.
He said this information should be classified.
Nah, it's not classified. I mean, I very quickly found it on Google. So, yeah. No, just echo on have a play. And, you know, and again, enjoy the experience of, like,
maybe if you've got a laptop, have a barbecue, take some pictures, eat your food whilst in the garden.
See, my definition of fun is like connecting it up,
food
taking the laptop with me,
yeah.
and then being at somewhere, and then like analyzing the photos like as they're coming out live.
Paints.
Yeah. So like, and just not even going there to take a picture, just going there to test like whether going up in the ISO on the camera or increasing it in Lightroom.
Paul leaves a very exciting life.
Yes. It's one of those though, isn't it? But
it is
each their own. I'd get a kick
you
out
don't
of
know unless you try, do you?
Exactly.
And a lot of us will go on forums to see what other people think, and it's like, well, you could just do yourself. For, the 20.
And it's part of the hobby. It's part of the hobby. Thank you everyone to joining live as well. It's always lovely to have you here. Again, loads of lovely comments coming in. So we got told that we were wrong in a different language today as well, which is even better than normal.
Don't go on Google Translate now.
Yeah.
300.
So no, it's always wonderful to have everyone coming in, joining in live. So and if you're rewatching this at any point, then you can tune into these live videos. We go live every Friday at 4:30. If you're wanting, almost without fail.
Next week I might have to on a train.
Oh, that's well exciting. So
I might be on a train. I might still be on a train. We'll just get into the railway station.
Okay, well, keep that there. Oh. You might have a little story there for next week then. So, yeah.
We should maybe do one. That's golf, by the way.
You shouldn't have said that was a thing for next week, but there we go. No, big thank you to everyone who's joining us. If you want to watch any of the other Photography Out Loud videos that you got, you can search on any of the social media platforms by using the hashtag Photography Out Loud. That sounded a bit more professional than normal, didn't it? You shocked yourself. I know. I was just like, who am I? You can also please like and subscribe to our Facebook and YouTube channels, and I've forgotten the other one. Likey, like, subscribe. Sherry. Goodbye. We'll see you next week, possibly from a train. Bye bye for now.
For a car. Or